In the local breakout page, there's now a utilization setting per overlay for local breakout. And this applies to waterfall mode. So by default, link selection here, set to waterfall, you'll have multiple primaries. It's going to use, for instance, in this case, we have rank links by fixed order. That means it's literally the order that it's set here. So that means it's going to use INET A first. It's going to put flows, local breakout flows on INET A. When INET A reaches 40% utilization or greater, that's what this thing here means, it will then start putting new flows on INET B. When INET B hits 40% or greater, it will put new flows on INET C and so on. That's what this thing here does. What it won't do is important, very important note. This does not cause the system to use backup links. So even if you're above, let's say that A, B, C, and D are all above 40% utilization, it is not going to bring in backup links for you. That's part of the reason why this utilization thing is not under the performance thresholds category. These values, so if the average of INET A is loss greater than whatever you put here, it will bring in the backups. But for utilization, it's just for waterfalling. But that utilization number is based on the value that you put in the deployment page. So everything comes out of that deployment page value that you specify. If you don't put that in correctly, a lot of the other things throughout the system won't behave as you would expect them to. So you can now set this. It used to be 80%. Since 8.3.1, there was a hidden internal utilization threshold of 80%. The difference is now that you can set that to whatever you want. There's also a new control for setting the session affinity feature. This has to do with, and there are a wide variety of examples where a good example is your iPhone. Like if you do an update on your iPhone, during the update, if part of the flows that handle the update show up from one source IP, public IP, and the other flows show up from a different source IP, the update will fail. The session affinity feature is on by default, and it's set to 2 by default. And what that means is for this internal IP address on the LAN side of the EdgeConnect, if it talks to a public IP address, and from that point on, all other flows that start between those two EdgeConnects will be put on the same label. So when we first say, all right, link selection determined that the lowest latency link was INET A. So we put the flow between these two IP addresses on INET A. As more flows start, we will continue to put the flows on INET A for as long as we can. Now, if there's an SLO violation, if there's something happens, of course, then Affinity will be broken. But this mechanism attempts to keep the flows sessions between two IP addresses on the same label. This is the number of minutes since the last flow ended that we preserve the affinity. You can set it to 0 to turn the affinity off altogether.